The office was already buzzing when Claire Thompson stepped through the glass doors, 15 minutes earlier than everyone else, just like every day. She walked with purpose but not urgency, her heels clicking gently on the floor, a clipboard in one hand and two folders tucked under her arm. She moved like she belonged, though no one ever said it out loud. Claire wasn't flashy. She wore her usual navy skirt and white blouse, her graying hair pinned neatly. Her smile was soft, always ready, and her voice rarely rose above polite. She was the kind of woman everyone relied on but never really saw. The "just a secretary" type. She set the CEO's desk in order before he arrived, reports alphabetized, coffee hot, schedule reviewed. She answered emails he never noticed, rescheduled meetings he would have double-booked, and flagged numbers that didn't look right, all without being asked. As executives rushed in, glued to their phones, they gave her absent nods. Claire nodded back, offering a quiet, "good morning," that often went unheard. Even Mr. Franklin, the CEO himself, barely glanced her way. He spoke over her in meetings, forgot her name in introductions, and yet, she never took offense. What they didn't realize was that Claire was always listening. She knew which clients were nervous, which managers were faking confidence, and which reports were hiding problems. She saw what others missed, not because she was told, but because she cared. And one day soon, that unnoticed gift would change everything. The atmosphere in the boardroom was thick with tension. A dozen senior executives sat around the long glass table, papers scattered, laptops open, and stress painted on every face. The company's biggest contract, a multi-million-dollar deal with an international tech firm, was slipping through their fingers. Numbers weren't adding up, delivery timelines were off, and trust was crumbling fast. The investors had flown in for answers, but all they were getting was confusion. Mr. Franklin, the CEO, stood at the head of the table, his voice confident but his eyes betraying unease. He flipped through presentation slides that only deepened the doubt. Every strategy felt rushed, every explanation shallow. One of the key investors leaned back in his chair, arms folded, already reaching for his coat. Claire sat at the far end, near the door, silently typing notes no one would read. She had seen the warning signs weeks ago, mismatched data in reports, emails that went unanswered, and a crucial file that had been filed under the wrong project name. She had even drafted a corrective summary and quietly tucked it into a folder. But no one had asked. No one ever did. As the conversation spiraled and voices grew louder, Claire glanced at the reports again. She knew the solution was right there, hiding in plain sight. Her hands trembled slightly. She wasn't supposed to speak. She never had. But something inside her whispered, if not now, when? And in that moment, she began to rise from her chair. Claire stood up slowly, the room still buzzing with debate and frustration. Her voice was quiet at first, almost uncertain. "Excuse me," she said, holding a file gently in her hands. No one heard. She cleared her throat and tried again, this time louder. "Excuse me. I believe we're looking at the wrong report." The room fell silent. All heads turned toward her, some confused, others annoyed. Mr. Franklin looked surprised, even slightly irritated. "Claire, this isn't the time." But Claire didn't back down. She stepped forward with calm determination, her voice steady now. "With all due respect, sir, the figures you're using are from last quarter. The updated projections, the accurate ones, are in this folder." She placed the file on the table and opened it, revealing carefully highlighted notes, corrected data, and a solution plan she had quietly pieced together weeks ago. Claire's handwriting was clear, confident. Her logic airtight. "This timeline," she explained, pointing to the pages, "matches the supplier delays you were informed about, but no one adjusted the contracts accordingly. If we revise the delivery expectations based on this model, we can still meet the investor requirements and retain the deal." The room was frozen. Executives who had never looked her in the eye were now hanging on her every word. The lead investor leaned forward, scanning the documents. A long pause followed. Then, a slow, approving nod. For the first time, Claire's voice wasn't just heard. It was trusted. The meeting ended with a collective exhale, not of defeat, but of unexpected relief. Investors shook hands, reassured and re-engaged. The deal was salvaged, not by a flashy presentation or a last-minute bluff, but by a soft-spoken woman whose name most of them hadn't even known until that moment. Later that afternoon, Mr. Franklin sat alone in his office, staring out the window, visibly shaken, not by the crisis, but by the realization of who had truly saved the company. He pressed a button on his desk phone. "Send Claire in." Claire entered quietly, as she always did. But this time, the air between them felt different. The usual formality was gone. Mr. Franklin stood up and walked around his desk, meeting her eye to eye. "Why didn't you speak up earlier?" he asked, genuinely puzzled. Claire smiled gently, hands folded in front of her. "I've tried. But I learned a long time ago that when you're seen as just the secretary, people don't always listen." Her words weren't bitter, just honest. And they landed with unexpected weight. He paused, humbled. "You didn't just save a meeting today. You saved this company." He offered her a promotion, something long overdue, but more importantly, he offered her respect. "I want you in leadership. Your insight, your instincts, they're what we've been missing." Claire didn't beam or gloat. She simply nodded and said, "I've always been here. I'm just glad you finally saw me." And in that moment, everything changed. A few weeks later, the company hosted its quarterly town hall, a sleek, high-energy event held in the main auditorium. Employees from every department gathered in rows, murmuring curiously about a special recognition promised by the CEO himself. The stage lights dimmed, music faded, and Mr. Franklin stepped up to the podium, a new humility in his voice. "I want to tell you a story," he began, scanning the room. "About someone many of you pass every day without really seeing. Someone we've relied on for years, without even realizing it." He recounted the near collapse of the big investor deal, the critical error in the reports, and how, in a moment of chaos, one voice rose quietly and saved the company. He didn't name her right away, but by the time he did, every employee already knew who he was talking about. "Claire Thompson," he said, turning to gesture toward the front row. "Would you please join me on stage?" Claire stood up slowly, visibly surprised by the thunderous applause erupting around her. People who'd barely acknowledged her in elevators were now standing, clapping, cheering. She walked up, modest as ever, in a simple blouse and skirt, but this time, she wasn't just part of the background. Taking the mic, Claire spoke from the heart. "I'm not used to being seen," she said softly. "But I've always believed that doing your job with care, even when no one's watching, still matters." And in that moment, she became more than a secretary. She became a symbol of quiet power, of overlooked brilliance, and of what it means to lead with heart.